Hey everyone, welcome to the Restored Justice Podcast here with Bruce Strom and our friend Tempia Courts. Bruce, in a moment, you're going to introduce her to us. And also, if you don't mind, set up this episode as we work our way through the story of the Good Samaritan, looking at different characters in the scene. When we first opened the season, I was surprised that there was a character in the scene called a lawyer that I hadn't thought of. We're going back to that lawyer now to kind of look back and say, okay, the lawyer heard this story from Jesus. Then what happened? Let's unpack that a little bit with Tempia's help. Go ahead and introduce us to her and set this up for us.
Yes, Joe. So a lot of people don't always think highly of attorneys, right? We hear all these different lawyer jokes, but and I don't know with this lawyer, right? Some people may have thought that in the lawyers in that day and the questions that he had, but there are wonderful lawyers. One great lawyer, Tempia Courts,
Yes.
serves on our Administer Justice Board, serves at her church, leads a gospel justice center along with a wonderful team. She doesn't do that alone at her church. And so she has great insights into this. And one of these very talented lawyers works corporate world, so not what our clients encounter, and yet is able to see how God can use the skills that he's given to her to really come alongside vulnerable neighbors who need help and can give that guidance. So love
And to that end, Bruce, like the way I think of Tempia is our board is full of lawyers, the board of Minister Justice, but like she's our go-to lawyer. Whenever all the other lawyers have questions, they're like, what does Tempia think?
That's right. Tempia is the real lawyer on our board. That's right. Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Continue on.
No, it is so true. And I just love this because sometimes we do, hey, are there good lawyers? Maybe people listening, they don't think that. I love in this country. Did you know November 1st, you've got to mark it on your calendar. November 1st is Love Your Lawyer Day.
Okay.
National holiday it is.
Yeah. I bet it's not, right? I'll bet nobody knows that. But I love the person who at least got it through. There's probably some lawyer in Congress.
The way I'm going to love my lawyers, I'm going to make sure I don't have any open invoices sitting in my email box.
Oh, there you go. Your lawyer will love you too, Joe.
Yes.
That will work. What I don't know is the lawyer in the story. This is what I love about the parable of the Good Samaritan. One, we don't always recognize it's a lawyer that sets up the parable, that asks the question. What I'm still wondering, and I'll have to get the answer when I get to glory, but what did that lawyer do with that? He hears the story, right? And we see at the very end, Jesus asks him, well, which of these was the neighbor? Well, and it's hard for me to tell. I mean, you could read his answer in one way saying, wow, he was not happy with Jesus' answer at all, because he doesn't even use the word Samaritan, the one that showed mercy. Or did he go, well, I got to think about this more, like a lot of good lawyers. And did he leave when Jesus said, go and do likewise? And did he? Did he go and do likewise, or did he not?
Was his life changed from that moment on, right?
Right. And I think lawyers, we all have that opportunity. We hit a crossroads, and what are we going to do with our profession? Are we going to just make money, or are we going to also have meaning? And can we stop and serve a neighbor on the Jericho Road?
Tempia, why did you go into law? Like, what was your, going back to being when you were a young girl with all kinds of options, right? Why law? What pulled you into it?
And I love the way that you phrased it as young girl. But first, before I go there, thank you both for your kindness. Too kind with the words and encouragement. I'm either the go-to lawyer or the most opinionated. It's one or the other on the board. But you said young girl. It actually was back in junior high school. I always have been an avid reader. My mom's a language arts teacher. So in doing a lot of reading and my mom teaching Black History Month, in addition to language arts, reading, writing, and all of that, I took an interest in the civil rights movement, and in particular, how the law was used to change the rights and also just the quality of life for people who look like me. My family and others. My family comes out of the South. I also was born in the South. So that resonated with me and I never forgot it. Thurgood Marshall stood out to me, as well as many other notable lawyers during that period. I carried that with me and I made the decision really in 7th grade that I was going to be a lawyer, and not just a lawyer, a civil rights lawyer. So that translated into pursuing law school down the road. Even in college, I focused on voting rights as a concentration in political science. And then also ended up clerking my first summer law school internship. Those summer internships are important for law students. The first one was with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund, where Thurgood Marshall did such monumental great work. He, along with a cadre of so many other wonderful attorneys. And so I followed that path. And I've stayed true to that in the sense of the work that I've done over the years in the public interest space. And even now, as I continue in pushing for advocating for the rights of all Americans to be able to vote to the extent they're able by law to do
Mhm.
so, and to be able to exercise the right to vote without any sort of impediment in that way. So I followed that and kept that heart. And my work through Administer Justice, I think, is a great adjunct and a complement to really my civil rights bent and heart passion that I have in
So
that way.
staying on that, here you are, like obviously you're doing your kind of your original civil rights calling, right? Voting rights and all that. No one's necessarily paying you for that. That's a passion thing that you're doing, right? I'm assuming
Yes.
mostly as a volunteer. And you're an attorney with clients and all that kind of stuff.
hmm
What, how did the Administer Justice door open for you, and why would you walk through that? You're already a busy attorney. You got a lot going on. You got clients to serve, this passion you're pursuing. Why take on something new?
Well, one, it really is my bent. It's the way I
Hmm.
was raised, and having a passion for people in need, the underdog, so to speak. It's really the way my dad was. I think I came into that from him, as well as my mom being a teacher and so many teachers in my family. So responding to people's need has just been something I've always done. But then since becoming a lawyer, of course, when people find out you're a lawyer, they will come ask for help. They'll send their family, their friends, your parents will volunteer you for help, all those kinds of things.
That's
And
right.
it was just so hard to say no to people who could not afford an attorney. But it's challenging when you're trying to respond to that need alone, an individual attorney. And the Ministry of Administrative Justice struck me because, number one, it's a ministry. It's using my law school education, skills, experience as an attorney to be able to help others from a ministry standpoint, but not going it alone, doing
Hmm.
the work, the ministry, the good work in community. That's what drew me, to be honest, because it was help. I wasn't having to go it alone in
Yeah, no,
helping
that's
others.
great.
But then as I continued to serve, just seeing the importance and really the value in serving in community and really surrounding the client, not just giving them legal advice, but also holistically providing support, care, concern, really just loving on them. Quite often for clients who are not loved on when they're seeking support, help, assistance, and secular resources.
Hmm. So Bruce, there it is, right? You know, you set us up with this, the way the story played out, where Jesus says, "Go and do likewise," and then here's an attorney in her own way going and doing likewise, right? She could have easily said, "I got to keep walking, stay focused. You got to get to the big city. You got to go make the money." And going, "Wait a minute, no, there's people hurting. I got to love on, and here's an engine that allows me to do that." But you talk, Tempia is unique, but you have lots of Tempias in your life, right? So talk about that lawyer who may have wrestled with the same question this lawyer in the Bible did, which is, what do I got to do to get this right? And this opportunity to now serve.
Yeah, I love that. And we do. Tempia knows many of our lawyers as well. We have a wonderful group, now several hundred lawyers across the country who are joining this movement that is based upon the Word of God, right? It's a gospel justice movement. That's what we're talking about, gospel justice. And I love seeing lawyers recognize that once they overcome some fear that maybe they don't know the subject matter because they're an employment lawyer like Tempia, and they recognize, no, honestly, I know more than I think I know, or I know how to get the answers quickly that other people don't know how to ask the right questions. We talked about that before, that lawyers ask good questions and get to the source of it. And my being there with somebody when I am the least likely person to stop. We talked about that when we talked about the
Mm-hmm.
Samaritan. Because lawyers, when they leave the ivory tower of their corner offices, which is what every person on the street thinks. Now, I know not all lawyers have that, but that's what everybody
Yeah.
thinks, right? That they
Yeah.
have all this power and privilege. And when they literally set aside that privilege and enter into somebody's neighborhood and they're just sitting listening beside them to the story and entering into it. And then when they take that power that they have and they use that power for good to see somebody restored, like the Samaritan did with his resources, it just, to me, is the most beautiful picture of Jesus Christ. I mean, Jesus left the corner office of heaven. He wrapped himself in human flesh, entered into our neighborhood, sat beside us, and pointed us toward him. And so he set aside all privilege and he used his power to heal and restore people. And
Mm-hmm.
in the legal system, that's what we get to do. And I see lawyers doing it every weekend somewhere across the country. And if there are lawyers listening, please don't stand on the sideline. I think that is the point of the parable. Will you listen? Will you see the need of a neighbor? Will you be the priest and the Levite that pass by, or will you be the Samaritan that stops? Will you answer Jesus' call? Really, Jesus looked him in the eye and said, go and do likewise.
Mm. Tempia, when you were introduced to this idea of Gospel Justice Center, be a volunteer, do some pro bono work, yeah, it was in your bent and you were wired for it. If there was any hesitation or concerns or what ifs in your mind, what were those and how did those get overcome?
Well, Bruce hit the nail on the head, really the subject matter. And that's what I run into when I'm speaking to other attorneys. And I talk to them about the types of cases. The attorneys, that's one question that nearly every attorney I approach to volunteer will ask. Well, what types of cases do you have? What types of issues do the clients bring? And so I'll mention landlord tenants, family law, be it child custody, child support, that kind of thing. And then the eyes sometimes will shift or gloss over because I'm talking to a transactional attorney who puts deals together and works on
Yeah.
contracts, or it's a litigator who's hard charging going to court, or it's a real estate attorney who's helping with those types of transactions as well, but not someone who handles family law or landlord tenant from that perspective. And so it's this idea of, but I need to know. I need to know this area of the law. How can I possibly help this client without having familiarity with that particular area of the law? And that's what I talk about, as Bruce really leaned into in his commentary. It's what we already have in a way. It's that skill, that experience based in practice of law, of being able to spot the issues, being able to listen well. That's a skill that not everyone has. You can help people a lot just simply by listening and understanding what the true need is. Quite often, it's more simple than the client thinks, or even that you may even think. But it's the average attorney being, or many attorneys, I should say, having that type A personality and maybe
Mhm.
even a bit of a perfectionist bent, wanting to know, understand before they go in. Bruce isn't in litigation training. They tell us never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. So attorneys having that idea of when I go in, I want to be prepared. And so when you think of the parable with each of those individuals who were on the road, and certainly the Good Samaritan who stopped, right? He didn't have to go back and say, well, wait right here. Let me go get this
Yeah.
thing, or
Yeah.
let
Or
me
let me
go
look
get
up, let me
something to
do a
help.
quick look up on
Yeah, no,
Google for like
Yeah.
how to patch up a wound.
exactly.
Yeah.
He stopped and he helped with what he already had.
Yep.
And the beauty of that parable, he stopped and he helped with what he had in the moment that the opportunity, the need presented itself.
Mm.
And so when I talk to the attorneys, I try to help them to understand just your training is enough to start to
It's
help you to
enough,
spot
right?
the issues, and then helping them to understand that there is help in the way of the resources that we have available through Administer Justice, but also the importance of community. Because in a way, that's also what the parable talks about. Community being those two individuals, the person needing help and the person offering help, but also the people around who didn't necessarily help. But it's the idea of one needing another and the importance of one lifting up, supporting, and helping another. Well, that's the same thing with the attorney, is that when you raise your hand, look for opportunities to not necessarily have to go it alone. And that when you step out there are other pro bono organizations besides Administer Justice. There are many that offer support and assistance to help you as an attorney to give whatever time you have available and whatever moment you are in terms of your knowledge or skills or experience, and they will help to equip you to be able to be of service. But to just present yourself in the way of just being available to serve and to help.
Amen.
Bruce, that's kind of been the theme of this entire season, hasn't it? We haven't planned it this way. Every session we've done has been kind of ad lib, so to speak, not a lot of prep. But there's been a couple themes I've picked up from all our guests, and Tempia is really putting an exclamation point on it. One of them is just be available, right? That whole idea of stop. The idea that really this is just about loving on people and being good listeners. Tempia's gone a step deeper for us to say, what you need for this, you got in your basic college, not college, but your legal training, right? That was enough to help these people get through a 25-minute conversation while you can be a blessing. And then this idea of community, that you won't be alone. But if you don't mind, as you close us out on this episode, talk to us about what do the community of lawyers who are part of AJ get to do? Like, how are they in any way connected? And how do they essentially expand their network by getting to know each other? And then any closing thoughts from you?
Sure, we do like to pull together lawyers. The lawyers are also equally encouraged, I will say, by non-lawyers. So if you're not a lawyer, you're not lesser than. You're really important on a team. We have a team of 9 people. We've talked about that in earlier podcast episodes. And one of those is the lawyer. So the lawyer does benefit from this other wonderful prayer team, hospitality team, advocate team, follow-up, all of these other people that are helping. It's the same thing the Samaritan did as well, right? The Samaritan didn't do it alone. He took the opportunity, he did use what he had, but then he went to an inn where there were other people that could help. And so that's what we do. We've got this inn that we pulled together that helps restore neighbors in need. And so know that. The attorneys, they do have community too. And so we bring them together around fellowship once a year to restore conference or regional conferences. Tempia's church just hosted a regional conference. It's so fun to bring people together, and these volunteers who recognize that God has given them a unique opportunity. That's not a heavy lift. That's not a hard thing to enter into. You just need to be available and willing to step out by faith, and then God shows up. And then you get to hang around other people that recognize this. They are fun. I mean, it's a fun group of volunteers and people, and they all encourage one another. Same thing for the lawyers. They get together and they share these stories just like Tempia did. I didn't think I could be useful. I didn't think God could use me because I am that real estate attorney, or I am that transactional attorney, or I am that rock star litigator. And suddenly I realized that my availability, that God always showed up, and that God was present in the midst of each of these divine appointments, and he always made a way, and I had more than I thought I did, and I could really be useful, and I could see the impact right in the moment from the the clarity that comes out of confusion as we give these next steps for them to do. So it's a beautiful thing, and I love what even clients, so I can just close this out maybe, Joe, with a client, or if you've got some follow-up, but I love these. I hear these from clients all the time. Every weekend I say, we get these great comments. Here was one recently. These attorneys volunteer their time. They are not trying to sell you their services. They really want to help you succeed. The help I received was invaluable. It would have cost me hundreds of dollars in any other setting. I am praising God for Administer justice.
That
Imagine
is
hearing
powerful.
that, right? That's powerful.
Yes,
Tempia,
absolutely.
thank you for hanging out with us and spending some time. I know you've been an encouragement to all. Bruce, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.